This is Long Shots, VSiN's premier golf betting podcast. Here's Matt Brown, Wes Reynolds, and Kelley Bydlon.
Hello and happy 4th of July. It is a very special edition of Long Shots. I'm Matt Brown. I'm joined on the desk here by Kelley Bydlon and Wes Reynolds. We're going to talk some John Deere Classic as we move on. Listen, not the sexiest tournament in the world, but guess what? You got something to bet on, so we're going to try to give you some picks that maybe will cash and put some more money in your account. Fellas, we're sitting here coming off of another tournament in which there was a bunch of low scoring. Me and Kelley talked a little bit about it yesterday, Wes, but is there anything that you took away from this past weekend, or was it just one of those things where it's like, hey, look, it was the cream rose to even though there was low scoring, the cream still rose to the top, and we got a championship for Rickie Fowler.
Yeah, Rickie Fowler, even though he didn't make my outright card, I didn't make the FOMO play, and, I missed out on Rickie at 14-1, but you felt like a win was coming for him. The fact that he had the back-to-back top 10s at Colonial and Memorial in the final group both days on the weekend at the U.S. Open, ends up T5. So it was coming. It was just a kind of a matter of when, and when happened last week, especially on that playoff hole. Great second shot to get in there tight for birdie. Beats Morikawa and Hadwin for the playoff. But, yeah, another low-scoring birdie fest here in the Midwest. We're going to get another one this week at the John Deere. Later this summer at the 3M Open in Minneapolis, we're going to get another one. So you see a lot of parallels with this course. At least that's the way I went this week.
Kelley, 4th of July here on VSiN and on DraftKings Network. Couldn't put on any red, huh? Didn't have anything you could have done to be patriotic?
I got a little blue. I got a little white. You added the red, okay?
Well, kind of. I know. Listen, this is one of those things where I'm kind of glad that maybe, people are doing their own. Maybe they're just listening to us, not watching us, because it's maroon at best. Now, it's maroon. I did the best I could. I got some red, white, and blue, but it's maroon at best.
Well, we could have made it entertaining. We were discussing pre-show whether or not you and I, whether I should take your jacket or you should take my shirt, and then it would have looked really entertaining for this 1 hour.
Maybe maybe there's a prop bet in the future, on one of these tournaments in which we will have to go about doing that. But yeah, for me, quick takeaways if you didn't catch the podcast yesterday, mainly just the deal is like Wes said, we knew it was coming for Rickie Fowler. If you talk about consistency outside of Scotty Scheffler, he's been the most consistent player on tour this season. And so you go back and you start to put things together. And yeah, I know you didn't want to play the 14-1 on Rickie Fowler, and I can understand that. I didn't do it pre-tournament, lucked into an 11-1 after round one because he just had an extremely poor putting round in round one. He had been one of the better putters on tour all year and certainly one of the best putters in that field that was going on. I figured that maybe somewhere along the way he'd be able to right the ship. And I, again, basically getting pre-tournament odds after I had a round of sample size under my belt, Kelley. But, really coming off of that, to me, it just shows that these tournaments like last week, like this week, which we're going to talk about here in a second, there's going to be a lot of guys go low. The variance is going to be high. Sure, the lowest odd guys can certainly win, but as we saw, there were 7 different guys that shot 20 under, at that tournament. So there was a lot of different guys in the mix, a lot of different guys that could have come out with the championship. And look, that's going to show in my card. I'm sure it's going to show in y'all's card, but that's kind of how we have to approach these tournaments. And if you do miss out on a Rickie Fowler at 14-1, it's not like you're missing out on Rickie Fowler at 50-1 where we had, or 40-1 in some of these other tournaments.
Yeah, I think, a couple of things to take away from that. I think it's when you get more of these low scoring putting contests like that was, and like we're probably going to see this week. I think it's a little bit, I back down a little bit on some of my finishing position bets a little bit because of like you're talking about even Sunday on that back nine, you got so many guys that are jumbled up, between a few strokes that, hey, you get a bad finish by your guy, he might swing 10, 20 spots pretty easily. So I think it's something to keep in mind. But, great to see Rickie get the win. We've been waiting on it. Like you said, Wes, we've kind of seen it coming here over the past 6-7 months now. We saw Jason Day kind of build up, was playing really great golf, gets the winner's circle with a victory. Now we've seen Rickie do it. Two great golfers, in the history of golf over the past 12 years or so. That it's just awesome to see them winning again. I think the other story out of this, though, it's Collin Morikawa. This guy's season is becoming a head scratcher to me because we've seen him play some really good golf We've seen him choke a couple tournaments away, Wes. I know we were on with him early in the season against Rahm when he got ran down by Rahm. Thought he had I know he played an incredible final round, but I thought he had a chance to put this thing away. Really kind of, I don't want to say blew it, but missed a putt and just allowed enough room for Rickie Fowler to come in there and win the thing.
Wes, my question, I guess, before we move on here to the John Deere, we were talking about the struggles that Justin Thomas had, and then he bounced back he bounced back the week before, and then at the Rocket Mortgage goes and misses a cut. That's 3 out of 4 cuts missed for Justin Thomas. And do we, at this point, have to view him as a guy that probably we have to just look to fade? I don't know if there's a good buy point here on a guy that used to be someone we go, he's drifted to like 22. It's a must play now. And now we got 3 or 4 missed cuts. It doesn't really seem like anything is working for him. And how do we kind of treat him moving forward?
Yeah, he's either a fade or just a leave alone for me, because you never know, because he does have that greatness in him where he is, top class and world class. But when is he going to find it again? And it's going to be interesting as we get later into the summer and into the early fall. Then we start talking about Ryder Cup a lot more. Would he be one of your top 12? I don't think so. Now, Rickie Fowler, certainly, he's got a spot. Wyndham Clark, I think, cinched one at the U.S. Open. Keegan Bradley, probably the year before, put him in good shape to make the Ryder Cup team. So you got these guys like Justin Thomas. Tony Finau, by the way, the defending champion, does not make the weekend. So those are the 2 guys with experience that seem to be part of that U.S. core that wouldn't be one of your top 12 right now going to Rome.
As we head to the John Deere, guys, this is the weakest field we've had in a while, and that's okay. It's still going to give us some betting opportunities here, but you're going to see very short numbers next to guys where the number is normally much larger. Your betting favorite in this tournament is Russell Henley. He is 14-1, not a number we are used to seeing next to Russell Henley. Denny McCarthy sitting at 16, as is Cameron Young. Pretty big jump there to the next tier, which is Adam Hadwin, Ludwig Aberg, Emiliano Grillo, Taylor Moore, Steven Yeager, Adam Schenk. These are all guys sitting in that kind of 25 to 30-ish range. And then a nice little kind of next tier there of guys that I think maybe we'll, if they're not on our cards, we'll certainly talk about. And Seamus Power, Chris Kirk, Keith Mitchell, Benny On, Patrick Rogers, Eric Cole. These are all guys that are kind of in that 35 to 45-ish type of range as well. So the field in and of itself, not as deep as we have seen basically all year. We've had a good run of some of these elevated events and some of these events that have guys that are tied to them by sponsors, so they have to show up and play, and that's just not the case this week. But Wes, as we head to Illinois, what are we looking at here on the course?
Yeah, and you look, by the way, at the top of the market. It's kind of amazing to see Cameron Young. He was 33-1 at the Masters just a couple months ago. Open 20-1 this week. So you got like McCarthy and Henley, who were triple-digit shots at Augusta, that are now like 14 and 16-1. It just shows the recency bias. So I actually considered Cameron Young. I didn't have him. I may add him in play. But in terms of the course, par 71, 72, 89, relatively easy course designed by D.A. Weibring. This used to be the Quad Cities Open, so they've had this event every year since 1972. It's actually one of the more well-supported events by a sponsor and by a community there in the Quad Cities. Bent grass fairway is about 37 yards average width, 9th widest on tour. Elevated bent grass greens, 5,500 square feet, pretty receptive. They'll roll around medium speed, 12 on the stimp meter. There is some thick rough here. Kentucky bluegrass and fescue, 4 inches. Can punish you, but it's not overly penal necessarily. So not a difficult course to score, but you are going to use the full bag of clubs, I think, with the sloping fairways, some elevation changes, some dog legs. 1.39 average score under par over the last couple of years, 9th easiest on tour. If you're looking for comparative courses, I think TPC River Highlands, which we saw 2 weeks ago for the Travelers Championship in Hartford, TPC Twin Cities, Detroit Golf Club, of course, where the Rocket Mortgage was last week, maybe a little Keene Trace down in Kentucky where they played the Barbasol Championship. But look, 20 under, you're going to have to be probably 20 under on Sunday just to be in contention, just like last week.
Yeah, Kelley, this is one of those tournaments that I think it does bring in a lot of variance. It does bring in a wide range of people. Now, I didn't necessarily, because, again, we'll get to our picks a little bit later in the show, but I didn't necessarily focus on some of the longer bombs in this one. That being said, it wouldn't surprise me if we do have Sunday, we're looking at a 200-to-1 guy that's at least in the mix, right? I mean, because if you get a hot putter, and any one of these guys on tour, they're awesome at golf. They know how to score, and certainly on easy courses. And if that goes along with a hot putter, you can see these guys come in and go super low. So it wouldn't surprise me, again, that, we just look at last week, right? Quest was a Monday qualifier and comes in, and now he's had some decent success on tour, but he runs super hot, finds himself up there in the top 10 of the tournament. It wouldn't surprise me to see that again this week.
Not at all. A couple notes on that just to back it up. Michael Kim in 2018, I believe he was like 300-to-1 that year when he won it. Missed cuts 3 straight tournaments heading up to it. Well, he won this thing because he gained over 13 strokes putting that week, right? On the other side, Dylan Fratelli, 2019, he lost strokes on approach, still won this thing, gained over 7 strokes putting. So it really is. I think this is kind of about as close to a definition of a putting contest as we're going to see all year. We saw a bit of that last week. It is interesting, Wes. I think you kind of hinted at it earlier. This isn't exactly an easy course around the green, but the problem is the scoring is so low here that if you're playing a lot around the green, you're in trouble already. So
yeah, it's one of the highest greens and regulation percentages courses on tour, and so we'll get to our models actually and what we factored in. But I think the point that you just made right there, Kelley, is just the fact that if you look at how receptive everything is, if you look at this as a lot of short irons, so you're not really going to be missing greens at as high a rate as you are with the longer irons stuff. What we did, I'd be curious what you guys did and didn't put in your model, because I didn't factor in some of the things where I'm kind of like, well, if that comes into play,
you're hosed anyways.
You're probably not you're probably not in contender. You're at least not scoring on that hole. Right. And in a tournament in which you need to go at least 20 under, that is something we're going to be focusing on. So again, we're going to come back here. We're going to be looking at what did we find important for these guys, and what did the model spit out, and did that dictate what we ended up putting on our betting card. It's Matt, Wes, Kelley coming back at you, long shots here on a Tuesday.
This is Long Shots, VSiN's premier golf betting podcast. Here's Matt Brown, Wes Reynolds, and Kelley Bydlon.
It's always football season here at VSiN, which is why we just released our NFL betting guide. Nice and early for you out there. NFL betting guide. Going to help you get ahead of the upcoming NFL season. In-depth profiles of every team, including advanced stats, proven betting systems, and proprietary betting trends. Plus, best bets on season win totals, futures, and props. Now, you can come in for $19 and become a pro subscriber to try things out, dip your toe in, if you will, or we have a summer kickoff special, $175, every single thing that we do here at the network to you all the way through the end of the Super Bowl. That is VSiN.com/subscribe if you want to go ahead and get on board. Wes Reynolds did 2 of the division breakdowns in that. We all had some opinions going on in there from some prop bet standpoints, win totals. Everybody gave who they think is going to win every division, who the wild card teams are going to be, who's going to win the conferences, and also who is eventually going to take down the Super Bowl. And one of the things here, before we get into our models, guys, like getting this out nice and early for people. Honestly, this time of year, Kelley, we talk about these tournaments like this tournament isn't for everyone, right? I mean, like this tournament isn't for everybody, and maybe you are a golf bettor that is just only going to dabble a little bit in the bigger tournaments, and that's the case. Maybe this is your chance to kind of get a head start on the NFL season and at least familiarize yourself with any of the stuff that went on in the offseason that maybe if you aren't living and breathing all of this stuff like some of us have to, that you kind of snuck under the radar to you, some key pickups for some different teams, and maybe it'll make you look at them a little bit differently. Yeah,
I think that this is always a good time of year to absolutely prep for NFL coming up, or college football, NFL or college football coming up. Also a great time of year to, hey, if you need to balance your sheets on your bets throughout the year, it's a good time to spend a few hours doing that. If you need to, take some money out of some accounts and spread it around to some other ones to kind of level everything up as you get into football season.
Yeah. Accounting, if you will.
Accounting, if you will.
Accounting.
Perfect time of the year to do that.
A little bean counting going on here. All right, Wes. So, like we said, various ways, I think, to attack this tournament. I'm curious to see if you guys went about it the same way I did. What did you put into your model, and what did you find important? And what did you exclude, actually? What did you not find important?
Yeah, not a lot necessarily off the tee here. If you look, you've seen bombers win here. You've seen, kind of slappies off the tee that don't hit it very long but hit it very straight. So I went, a little bit of good drives gain, not a lot necessarily, so that was very small. Most of it was approach or some kind of variety of approach, general strokes gain approach, and then also the proximity, 100 to 125, 125 to 150. You're going to get probably about 35 or so % of those shots are going to be wedges from 100 to 150 into the greens, and maybe even 75 to 100 if you want to look at that. I think you got to include some scoring stats this week. Birdie or better gained is something that I looked at. Opportunities gained. Now, the difference between that is opportunities gained is setting yourself up for opportunities. Doesn't take into account if you make the putt. Birdie or better certainly does. But, if you're getting opportunities here, you're going to at least cash in a few. These greens run pretty true, 12 on the stent meter bent grass greens. So I did do a little strokes gained putting on bent grass. Some strokes gained around the green because JT Poston, the postman last year, #1 in the field for SGARG. Dylan Fratelli was second in the category when he won in 2019. So are some little tricky spots around the green. There are some nuances here on this course. So I use that. I also use strokes gained total, easy scoring conditions, because I think it may not be as easy as it was last week, but I still think that, 20 under, you're going to have to be at that to go ahead and win this on Sunday. And then little comp course history. Went with Detroit, went with River Highlands, also went with TPC Twin Cities, as well as previous course history at Deer Run.
Kelley, as you were putting together your model, what did you kind of hone in on? What did you prioritize? And then what did you de-emphasize this week?
I think very similar to what Wes just talked about. Not a ton off the tee. We're dealing with some wide fairways here, about 40 yards average fairways. I did factor in good drives a little bit, and a little bit strokes gained off the tee, but good drives a little bit more. Like you said, Wes, looking for guys who are going to keep it in the fairway, set up a nice second shot for themselves heading into these very accessible greens. You want to hit the green, though. Don't want to be playing off the green. We just talked about it a little bit. Not exactly the easiest place to be playing around the green if you're forced to do that, and you got to be making birdies here. So off the tee, I did very little of. Then it was heavy approach, like Wes broke down. I mean, strokes gained approach, opportunities gain, and then a couple of those proximity buckets you already hit on, Wes. I did factored in not huge, was just look more at strokes gained approach and opportunities gains is what I factored in more. I did do par fives, 550 to 600. We got 3 of them on the course that fit in there. All of these par fives, I believe it's 27% or better birdie rate on. You got to score on those. Also looked at the par fours, 400 to 450 yards. And then birdie or better gain, did do strokes gain putting on bent grass, and looked at some course history.
Yeah, I focused very, very heavily on scoring this week. And so, look, is it going to be as easy as last week as Wes said? I mean, maybe not, but I do think there's going to be a lot of opportunities for guys to get on the scoreboard here, and that's where I prioritized. And so I don't know if it's necessarily zigging where other people are zagging, but I was very heavy on birdie or better percentage, very heavy on just par 5 scoring in general, very heavy on opportunities gained, and then also shout out to our friend Rick Gaiman over at Rick Run Good. He has an opportunities plus, which is actually inside 10 feet as opposed to inside 15 feet, and put that in there as well. So I kind of wanted to see who are these dudes that are attacking, and if they're attacking, how are they doing once they get in there and start attacking that and getting in there? So I did that. I didn't even do any general approach stuff. I just went strictly bucket stuff. And so I did 100, 125, 125, 150, and then 150 to 175. There is a very, very, very large chance the vast majority of the shots are going to come in those buckets, and kind of wanted to see, while I didn't lump them all together, I did want to see if anybody excelled in at least 2 of the 3. You know, when you break it out, and then if there's like a tiebreaker, you know, it's easy for me to kind of go in and see that's the way that I want to go with everything. The thing I did do off the tee, another thing, again, that you can do over at Rick's site is, you can kind of do a mixed model where even though you're looking at the last, say, 36 rounds or 24 rounds, you can still put in there, like, what's this guy been doing off the tee over the last 12? And you can put that as a factor into the model, whatever. And so I just want to see if anybody was really striping it off the tee. So I put in off the tee in the last 12 rounds. Same thing as Wes did, scoring, easy scoring conditions, good drive percentage, stuff like that. And that's where the model ended up for me. Wes, we'll get started with your outrights here, and we'll finish it in the next segment here. But as we were getting going and you were starting to put together your outrights, where did your card start?
Yeah, and I didn't go the short guys, even though you could make a case for all of them, but that's so hard to do in an event like this. So I went mid-range. I started actually, and this is maybe a little bit of last year. I actually did hit this last year at JT Poston at 55-1, and JT Poston was the runner-up the week before in Hartford. So usually I don't like to back a guy if they just got close, like right there for a win and didn't get it. But this is the case with Adam Hadwin, 28-1. Adam Hadwin, runner-up last week, has an 8th here in 2016. A guy that's been playing some pretty good golf of late. So the two Adams actually at the top. Adam Shank, who I did have last week, he ends up 7th. Made a nice little round on Sunday with a 6 under 66. But Adam Shank is one of those guys. He actually has good course form here, and this isn't really a course form type of event, but 4th in 2021, 6th in 2019, 3 top 7s in 3 of his last 5 starts, couple missed cuts there in between. But Adam Shank, who, from the Midwest, went to Purdue, so nearby, closest thing to a home game event for him. So Adam Shank, 30-1. The guy that appeared the most on all the stats that I did and all the little things that we modeled this week was actually Eric Cole. So I went with Eric Cole at 33-1. Of course, we were on him when he finished runner-up to Chris Kirk at the Valspar and lost at the playoff. So Eric Cole, not a lot of experience, though, here. I usually like to have a guy that has a decent finish here, at least in the past. That's certainly what the trends really indicate. But I'm willing to buck that with Eric Cole, 33-1. Alex Smalley, 42-1, really hitting his irons very well. He's often kind of questionable with the putter, so that can concern you. But Alex Smalley is a guy that I think goes well in these like Birdie Fest type of events. Dylan Wu, 66-1, 17th on approach, 3rd in birdie or better, 7th in strokes gained easy scoring conditions, 15th, 125-150. This is all over the last 36 rounds. Dylan Wu, 66-1. Ches Reavie, a guy who played pretty well, even though he didn't go that low on Sunday at Hartford, kind of got stuck in place. Was 4th 2 weeks ago, 29th in Detroit. I actually thought he played better than his finish. And then Callum Tarrant at 85-1 was 6th here last year. He's made, I believe, 5 of his last 6 cuts, primarily a DP World Tour player that's been playing over more here stateside, a guy that can really rip it off the tee. So those were my 6 outrights this week.
I will say Ches Reavie was a guy that popped up in a lot of mine. I didn't do anything with him this week. He's one of those golfers that I feel like every time I bet him, he like misses the cut somehow. So he gets easily scratched off my list every week. But just to back you up, he was one guy that was top 10 a lot of the models I ran.
Yeah, I will go ahead and let everybody know he's on my card this week as well. So we do have that going down. So we'll be sharing that outright. Well, so when we come back, we hadn't done it in a couple weeks, guys, but we're going to head around the world. And we're heading around the world with one Wes Reynolds. He has been nailing these outrights in these tournaments that you are likely not looking at and not betting. So why don't you just tail him here when we come back on Long Shots?
This is Long Shots, VSiN's premier golf betting podcast. Here's Matt Brown, Wes Reynolds, and Kelley Bydlon.
Before you make your next bet, be sure to visit VSiN.com to check out the current betting splits data.
Joey Chestnut's washed.
Want to know where the money and the bets are moving for every game? Hey, our betting splits page is updated with DraftKings odd every 10 minutes, so you can see where the changes in the action are happening. Not just today's action, but future events as well. VSiN.com for your betting splits data. So, going to take a quick aside here. They had to delay the hot dog eating contest for a lightning. Is that what it was? What, there was lightning out there? Is that what they had to, whatever?
It was canceled at first.
They just got it going. They just did it. I mean, Joey Chestnut did win, but he might be washed. Kelley, I mean, I don't know. I was watching his technique. He was 10 under his over-under. He did not cover the spread on any of his other matchups or anything that you saw. I think the question now begs is is this the end? Is this on the downswing here for Joey
I think we got to start asking that question. Did not cover the spread, went well under what his posted total was for hot dogs. And, trend to look out for going forward, Matt, because I know you love those trends. Joey Chestnut, after a weather delay, clearly not up to snuff.
Obvious. We just found this out, Wes. We're going to have to put the article. I'll let you do this for VSiN.com. Who is more washed, Joey Chestnut or Justin Thomas? And you can make the deal. You can do that.
Joey Chestnut has shamed Westfield, Indiana.
Yeah.
Westfield, Indiana's own suburb of Indianapolis, but nevertheless, Joey Chestnut. You look at the Chestnut. Stoney won in 2015, and then Chestnut. Such an outlier here, but wins it again, 16-time winner.
The most repulsive 12 minutes in all of television each and every year. That is exactly what we have going on. What we have going on right there. As we have not done for the last few weeks.
Uh-oh.
We're doing it. We're bringing it back, boys and girls. It's Around the World with Wes Reynolds.
Yeah, and we're going, by the way, the Live event in London. I'll have to wait for prices to get up. May have a couple going out there. They had qualifying today for the Open Championship. And as a side note, this was final qualifying. Sergio Garcia, by the way, does not make it. I think he misses it by one. First Open Championship since 1997 that Sergio Garcia will not be a part of. So, that just breaking.
Wes, real quick, we do have a couple guys, because I think Matt Kuchar's one of them, right? A couple of guys that are in the field this week for John Deere, playing in Europe for qualifiers for that. I believe Kuchar was playing in one in England yesterday. So something to keep your eye out on for, even when you're doing John Deere this week, that there were guys that were going U.S., Europe, back to U.S. to play in this event.
Yeah, and that'll play into one of my outrights here today with the Open Championship qualifying. Daniel Hillier of New Zealand, by the way, won last week at the Betfred British Masters, so he gets in the Open Championship along with Gunnar Wiebe and Oliver Wilson, the top three finishers there. But nevertheless, we go to Denmark this week for the Maiden Himmerland event. Alexander Bjork is the kind of co-favorite along with the Højgaard twins. Nikolai and Rasmus Højgaard going to play a home game this week in Denmark, as is Kjorborn Olesen. So what I went with here, and you got to shoot at least the last two times that this has been played here. 21 under has been the winning score, so you're probably looking at close to 20 under to go ahead and win this thing. This is going to play a par 70, 66-46 at the Himmerland Golf and Spa Resort in Farsø, Denmark. So I went with 5 this week. A couple guys near the top. Alexander Bjork, 18-1. Top 10 in 5 of his last 6 DP World Tour events. So there's a guy, maybe he's like the Rickie Fowler that's knocking on the door for a win and finally gets it at a short price. Jordan Smith, 22-1. 6th at the Porsche European Open, where he's 4th on approach. He was 20th, the respectable 20th, actually, at the LA Country Club for the U.S. Open. 3rd in the field on approach for the same category. Ewan Ferguson, 33-1. Ferguson was runner-up here in Denmark last year, T4 last weekend at the Belfry for the British Masters. And then one that does play into an angle, we were talking about Open Championship qualifying, Matthew Jordan, 55-1. He does, by the way, make the field, and he's a member at Hoylake, which is like the sister course for Royal Liverpool. So this is a total home game. So this was huge for Matthew Jordan to get one of those spots at one of the regional sites today. He is in the Open Championship. I think that's going to carry over, and I would not be surprised if he plays well in Denmark this week. And then Guido Migliozzi, 66-1. If you were watching on Sunday, he had a share of the lead. I think there was like a 6-way tie for the lead starting Sunday at the British Masters. He shoots a 43 on the front 9, and when you shoot a 43, that's going to take you out of it. But I'll still play him here because I think he played good golf. I just think that bad finish maybe masked what he really did. Second here 2 years ago on this course, Guido Migliozzi. So we have Maiden Himmerland. We have the Live event in London. We also have a major on the LPGA Tour at Pebble Beach. So have a couple out later this week for that.
Head on over to VSiN.com to get all of Wes's picks for all of those.
In case anybody's looking for Live numbers, you're talking about Brooks Koepka 8-1, Cam Smith, Dustin Johnson, Bryson DeChambeau 10-1, Taylor Gooch 12-1, Patrick Reed 16, Mito Pereira 18, Joaquin Niemann 22, everybody else 25 or longer.
Of course, Himmerland, known where it's Denmark's largest raised bog. It is important to the bird habitats there in Denmark. I just looked that up on the Google.
The more you know.
Yes. All right, Wes. All right, Kelley. Let's get to your outright picks here. And again, I'm curious as to what your model spit out and if, how married to your model you were, right? Like sometimes we talk about this a lot of times. And actually in segment 4, if you guys want to hang around, we're going to talk about some different little questions we get asked and try to answer some of those things and see if that can help you along the way as well. But, we're not always slaves to the model. It's more of a guide as to where to look, and then you take that piece of information and decide, okay, what does this look like from an odds perspective? Does it match up where these guys are showing up in my model? Does it make sense for me to make the bet? What kind of bet do I want to make? So I don't want everyone to think that it's just kind of like, these are 1 to 5 in my model, so that's just how I fire, and we go from there.
Yeah, it's a great point. I think when you look at mine this week, it is a lot of, I stuck to my model pretty heavily, but there's a lot of these guys in the mid-range that I just don't think there's that big of a separation from what we're talking about from the guys at the top of the board with Denny McCarthy's and Russell Henley's at 14-1. Now, one guy I wanted to hit on real quick. We talked a little bit about this yesterday, Matt, and Wes brought it up earlier. I think if you're seeing 20-1, 22-1, as I've seen on Cameron Young out there, it's a bit of a contrarian play. I got no problem with anybody making that kind of play this week. If we would have set these odds 7 months ago, he would have been 8-1, 9-1 in this field.
He's the only top 20 ranked player in the field, by the way.
He's been god awful. Off the tee, he's still been pretty decent, but every other part of his game has really struggled over the past few months. But when you're getting that kind of number on a guy I still think is a high caliber golfer and will get it together at some point, I'm not making that bet. But if anybody out there told me they were making a 21 to bet outright bet on Cameron Young this week, I couldn't blame you because these odds, we know what they would have been 6 months ago.
If I miss out on it, I miss out on it. I'm not worried about it. I think if you want to look, he's more of a dude. So you talk about like contrarian stuff. So I mean,
it's not the great course for him.
He's best for you guys that are able to play DFS out there, right? Like if you're able to play daily fantasy, people are going to forego Cameron Young this week because they're going to look and they're going to see his placements over the last several weeks and they're going to look at the stats and they're going to say, there's no way this guy, I mean, he's expensive on DFS. Like, there's no way I'm going to play him at this price, and they're going to move on. So I think he's probably a good DFS play. I don't know about an outright bet play. We just haven't seen 4 rounds. We actually haven't seen 3 rounds of his complete game, much less 4 rounds of his complete game in quite some time. And so for me, again, especially in a contest, especially in a tournament like this where a lot of guys are going to go low, I can't get there, but I get what you're saying.
The DFS is a good point. That's a great point because that's where that could come into play.
Yeah, because you can be contrarian there. You can actually be contrarian there, right? Like you are going up against everyone else, and if everyone else is thinking, I'd rather go here, then you go there. And if he does have you a top 10 performance, then you're making up some ground.
He's a good placement market bet, I think, too, for like a top 20. Where it's like, you think like even if he just kind of plays okay, he's going to finish in the top 20. But I had a tough time betting him. I got to wait to see how he does in the first round and maybe add an in play on Cameron Young. But certainly intriguing, but I think a better DFS option.
Yeah, I'll run through mine just quickly, though. Adam Schenk, I did play him. Played him at 30-1. Real mixed bag of results here recently. The stats all point his way, but he's got a 7th, a 7th, a 2nd, and then 5 missed cuts in between there. So it kind of mixed bag of results there. Just played the outright on him. But 2 top 10 finishes here over the past 3 years. Scrolling on down, my 2 favorite plays of the week, Eric Cole and Emiliano Grillo. I think no surprise for anybody here that, has listened to us for a while with Emiliano, but man, was he spiking at everything again this week. We saw him finish T2 here last week. Over the past 4 months, gentlemen, he's the 7th best putter on tour. I got to take that with my boy Grillo on a course that I know is going to matter with the putting a lot. Recent results have been fantastic, so I played him outright. I played him in the top 10 market. Staying away from a lot of top 20s this week for the most part. I have a couple I'll get to, but really looking for more of that bigger bang for the buck with the higher variance tournament we're likely going to see. Alex Smalley, my other outright play. I know you played him as well, Wes, but great on approach past couple months. Spike putting week, he could be right there. Was top 10 in every model that I ran. T16 here last year. We'll get to all my other bets on the other side.
Yeah, and I think what we're going to see here whenever we run through mine as well is I think what maybe these guys didn't necessarily appear in the exact same spots in our various models, but we just saw kind of a little bit of an edge from a betting perspective where the odds were matching up with them because we do share a lot of the same guys, not exactly in the same way. When we come back, we'll get the rest of Kelley's card and mine as well.
This is Long Shots, VSiN's premier golf betting podcast. Here's Matt Brown, Wes Reynolds, and Kelley Bydlon.
Become a VSiN Pro subscriber today. Get a daily email recapping all the best bets from our show hosts and guests. You get unlimited access to VSiN.com/picks page, where you can sort those picks by sport, matchup, event, date, and more. You can check our leaderboard, see who's got the hot hand. You get 24/7 video access. $19. Stick your toe in. VSiN.com/subscribe. Matt, Wes, and Kelley going to wrap things up here. Didn't get your placement market bets, Wes, so let's run through those real quick. And Kelley, then we'll get to yours, and I'll run through my card, and then we can answer a couple questions.
Plenty this week. That did not go well, actually. Last week was probably one of the worst events I had of the season. Hopefully it turns around. T20s on the chalky guys like Denny McCarthy, Cameron Young.
I did the exact same
and Henley.
thing. Yes, I did the exact same thing.
Yeah, so I think that's probably the best way to play those guys. I just cannot play Denny McCarthy and Russell Henley necessarily 14 or 16 to 1 on an outright. T30s, man, what a disappointing finish. You know, I was kind of patting myself on the back like Barry Horowitz style for Ludwig Aberg. And then on Saturday, he just melted down on the back nine, ends up finishing 40th, despite the fact that he put on a stripe show off the tee for about the first 2.5 days. So I put him top 30. A lot of the guys I bet on the outrights, I put in like top 30s. Hadwin. Chris Kirk was somebody I considered as well. Grillo, I know Kelley's high on him. He popped on a lot of my stuff, too, this week. He actually was second here last year to JT Poston. Smalley, Shank, Eric Cole, T40s on Reeve, Dylan Wu, Callum Tarrant. Those are three of my outrights. Also, Christian Bezadenhout, who also finished second here last year. Man, I almost played him, too, this week, but I think he'll be too obvious having finished runner-up, so I just went placement.
What are we looking at on your end, Kelley, from some placement market standpoint?
Round it out. I did top 10s on Grillo and Doug Gim, 6-1. Doug Gim, Matt, I know we've fallen into the Gim trap every once in a while here over the past year.
There again this week, buddy.
Yeah, okay, there you go. Yeah. Good, you're there with me. I didn't realize actually how well he had been playing recently over these past 6 weeks or so, but you're talking a 33rd place finish at the Rocket Mortgage, top 20, hit 4 times in 4 tournaments before that. So, yeah, played a top 10 on him. Nothing the outright market for me, although I might add that. He might be a first-round leader bet for me. Important note real quick, that weather is constantly changing. If you're looking to bet first-round leaders, miscuts, stuff like that, keep an eye on the weather here over the next 36 hours before this tournament gets going. Top 20s then, Eric Cole. It was the one finishing position bet I really felt comfortable with, playing just a top 20 on Eric Cole. Man, I know you guys have been high on him all year. Matt, even going back probably a little bit further.
He's a legitimate good golfer.
He's legitimate good golfer.
And the guy still plays like these like Muni events too. He played one in Pittsburgh where he won, where he's like playing for like $1,000 first prize. He just loves to play, but he is safely in the FedEx Cup standings.
And there's one of these. There's a lot of these guys where we can look at and say, like, okay, they played well for 1 week,
right?
And like that is not what we're seeing with him. We're seeing consistent good finishes over.
He's been doing it every week. So yeah, top 20. That's what, I'm pretty heavier on that. Carson Young, I keep going back to this, but hey, if I'm getting 3-4 to 1 on a top 20 on him, and hey, simple math, if it hits every 2 or 3 weeks, Matt, like that's still a pretty good bet. So whether it's Austin Eckroat or Carson Young, they feel like the two guys that I've been going back to the well with pretty frequently here. So that's everything I've got so far. We didn't have a lot of tournament matchups posted here in Vegas. I'll be adding those. I'll be adding first round leaders. Check VSiN.com tomorrow. Everything will be out there.
And one more thing, if I can add really quickly on Eric Cole, who, by the way, actually did take the week off last week. I think that was his first time off in like 3 months. But if you look at the form, 24th, 39th, 6th, 24, miscut, 15th, 23rd, miscut, 5th, miscut. So, yeah, there's some miscuts. But when he does play well, he plays really well, and he is up there. So on a placement market, if you don't want to do an outright, which I know you and I both did, Kelley, placement market, he is absolutely the play, I think, this week.
Yeah, so kind of one of the guys that you guys are on is why I went a different route. So I'll start with my placement market bets. I have a top 10 on Adam Schenk, and like I don't know if he can close the deal or not, but I will say this. He's the type of guy you don't want to play in a top 40. You probably don't want to play in a top 20 even, because he's one of the dudes, if everything's working, he's going to be in the mix. And if it's not working, he's done so. All you have to do is look at his finishes. 7th last week, 2 cuts in a row, 7th the week before that, 2nd the week before that, 3 more cuts. It's like basically he has the type of game that if everything's working for him, if the course fit is there and everything's rolling, he's going to be in the mix. And if he cannot get there, then he's going to miss the cut. So I'll just play the upside play on him with a top 10 bet. So I have a top 10 bet on him this week. Just went a different route than you guys did. So
second
top 10 bet on
second at the Valspar earlier this year too. Yeah, I hear you, man.
So it's one of those, like, he's a boomer bust guy. You don't want to play him in a top 40 because that's not the type of player he is. He's not the consistent dude. He's not steady Eddie. Those are the type of guys you want to play in those markets. I have top 20, same as you. Henley and McCarthy, listen, they should top 20 this tournament. Now, are they going to win a putt fest? Like maybe they miss one putt along the way, and that could be the difference here. So I can't get there at 14-1, but I am going to go ahead and lay probably the heaviest I've played a placement market in one of these tournaments in a while because they are definitely the class of this field. It's just, one guy wins a tournament, right? I mean, like one guy wins a tournament. I just need him to finish in the top 20. So did that with Henley McCarthy. And Ryan Palmer, top 40 bet on him. He has been steady Eddie and has been very, very good for a while now. And I think that he fits very well. From an outright perspective, Emiliano Grillo, I know we've already talked about him. Alex Smalley, we've already talked about him. Ches Reavie, we've already talked about him. Now, I do have Doug Gim on my outright card. So I did play Doug Gim. By the way, if you look at the models that I built this week, in the 36-round model, Doug Gim, even at 60-ish to 1 out there, 4th overall in my 36-round model, 3rd overall in my 24-round model. So Doug Gim didn't match up from an odds perspective to where he showed up in the model this week for me.
He was second in 2 of mine.
Yeah. So Doug Gim on there. Lucas Glover, same deal. Lucas Glover inside the top 10 in my model, both different in everything that I was looking at. He's about 65-ish 1-1 out there if you shop around. And then Mark Hubbard, same deal. A guy that was about in the top 12, 13 in every one of the models that I had. And if you look at some of the upside stuff for him, certainly from the scoring standpoint, Wes, that's where Hubbard can really, I think, listen, if he's going to have to run pure and he's going to have to do all the things well, but he really shines in those scoring stats. And if that's the case, then I don't want to miss out on him at kind of 71 in a weak field, right? In a field in which he can go and kind of attack.
Yeah, that was one of those guys where it's like, man, I'm not going to use him, but I may regret it because I've bet him relatively frequently this year at some very big prices, and he's got a couple top 10s, has missed his last 2 cuts, but as we pointed out with Michael Kim a few years ago, won this thing, actually still has the all-time scoring record for the tournament here. Had missed like 3 straight cuts, but, you get hot with the putter, and that's what makes a difference sometimes on these pure bent grass greens where it's like anybody can get hot on any given week in an event like this.
So I will also, as head-to-heads populate here in town, put a few of those up on Twitter. So not very many options here on a Tuesday morning for us, so we'll go ahead and get those out there. I will probably add one more outright, and these are the guys, and it's guys that y'all are on in some way, shape, or form or fashion, but Eric Cole, Carson Young, Chris Kirk, maybe even a Ryan Palmer, who I am on a top 40 market. All 4 of those guys were kind of like the last guy off that I didn't quite pull the trigger on, but all of them have a very, very strong case here for whatever the odds are attached to them. And then this field, I want to put one of them in. I wish I could add all 4. I'm not going to just spray, here, but Cole, Palmer, Young, or Kirk is probably going to end up making the card.
Yeah, for me, it would be Gim, Glover, Palmer. Is probably I'll probably add one of those guys.
Yeah, so it's kind of one of those deals where I don't know exactly where I'm going to end up yet. Maybe I can find a way to play some of these guys in head-to-head markets, and then I can get exposure elsewhere for them. Just a couple of minutes here left with the show, but Kelley, we do get asked a lot, how do we split up and how do we differentiate between our outright picks, our head-to-heads, our placement market bets, and things like that? Listen, there's no right answer to all of this. Your bankroll is going to certainly play into this as well. I'm kind of somewhere always falling between 80-20 and 70-30 when it comes to outrights and placement market and head-to-heads and things like that. Of course, the bulk being in the placement market and head-to-head market. That's not necessarily saying that's right for you, but I think you can kind of find that you do want to put the bulk of your stuff into the things that are much more consistent, which placement markets obviously and head-to-heads are much more consistent than trying to hit one golfer who wins out of 150 golfers. So there is that, but I'm not saying like, oh, you got to be 80-20 or you got to be 70-30 or whatever. I mean, whatever. Maybe it's 60-40 for you. Maybe it's 50-50 because you don't bet a ton and like it's, but there should be a split here, and I don't think it should sway more than kind of 50-50.
Yeah, I think it's something we get asked about a lot, and we can can maybe expand on it on another episode going forward. But I think and everybody starts differently too. I don't know about you guys, but I usually start with tournament matchups. When I have guys circled that I want to bet on, I'm looking at matchups first. Maybe there's not matchups I like. Then I go and add more money in a top 20, top 40 market, something like that. I work my way around before I get to the outrights because I want to see how much money I've sunk into someone in other markets that I'm more confident in before I get around to that outright now.
And Wes, over on VSiN, you're actually putting in the units that you have going in, and so people can look and see.
Yeah, I proportion it because like when people say, "Oh, you play too many guys," it's like I'm not betting the same amount on every guy. And one of the reasons I do that too is if you start well for a season, there's nothing wrong with protecting with what you got built up. Everybody's like, "Oh, I want to press. I'm hot. I hit a couple in a row." No, momentum changes very quickly, so don't be afraid to go a little conservative with your bets.
Thank you guys for joining us over on DraftKings Network as well, and you can get Wes's full write-up over at VSiN.com. Good luck on all your golf bets this week.
Go to VSiN.com/subscribe to become a VSiN Pro subscriber today.